This one has been requested a lot since covering the Metro lore, but it appears a few of y'all would like to know what is the deal with the shrimp in Mother Russia. While there are vast differences between the appearance of these creatures, they are pretty standard to answer as to why they exist in this form. So without a ridiculously long intro, let's dive into the waters and try not to be eaten as we learn about the lore and morphology of the shrimps in the Metro universe. First and foremost, we have to get this out of the way. These guys aren't even really shrimp. Pretty mind-boggling, right? Shrimp are going to exist in salinized environments, and in this case, that's going to be the irradiated oceans of Earth. But they have a freshwater cousin who possesses armor. This is going to be the crawdad, crawfish, crayfish, or even mountain lobster. Seeing as I live in the South, we always just call them crawdads, but for the sake of this video, I will refer to them as crawfish. Definitely not a mountain lobster, because whoever came up with that is an absolute madman. A crawfish is going to prefer a freshwater environment over a salty ocean environment, and they're also going to have the armor plating necessary to protect itself from the elements and creatures that live closer inland. So now, with their actual designation out of the way, let's see what the effects the dire levels of radiation have done to these crawfish. The radiation first caused the creatures to become much larger, and with a larger size comes stronger armor and a more voracious appetite. Now that they are as large as humans, the crawfish have assumed their spot near the top of the food chain, and human meat is back on the menu, boys. It appears they've also become fiercely territorial as well, and they have been seen fending off demons from areas, and one can be even seen with its head ripped off by the Metro she-bear. Crawfish in general right now can be somewhat territorial, but will only really fight with one another for space. However, with the high radiation levels introduced, this has spread their influence to anything that even gets remotely close, including their once great predators, humans. There exists really two main areas where we see crawfish: in the rivers that run in the Metro now, which are still fished by people, and the surface where the real struggle for survival is taking place. However, if you observe these creatures for a little while, you might notice that they're really not going to look anything like one another. So are they going to be related or not? There are going to be two lines of thinking concerning these phenotypic differences. The first is that they have evolved separately and in different locations, and due to the differences between the radiation levels on the surface versus in the Metro, this has induced a lot of differences, and much like a sped up version of evolution, created creatures highly adapted to specific environments. The first environment underground is going to be typically safer than the surface. The tunnels were going to provide a somewhat safe haven for the crawfish in this area, and they continued to reproduce and became adapted to their surroundings. They developed a more worm-like mouth and apparently less armor due to really their only main contender in the area would be humans. Even still, they were usually less aggressive to humans, suggesting that they were also more docile in nature. The shrimp caught out on the surface had to adapt to a much more harsh environment, more radiation, more competition, and stronger creatures. While humans were out of the picture for the most part on the surface, the shrimp still had to contend with demons, watchmen, and bears, oh my. So, they adapted as you would expect to be more aggressive and have stronger armor. While this is a very good theory and may explain the great differences we see between the two versions of these creatures, there is also another line of thinking which I think personally holds more credence and still kind of explains why who lives where. The second theory is going to be sexual dimorphism. The females live in the tunnels and rivers of the Metro spawn and lay eggs as well, and they're just going to survive in general down there. They are separated from the males, and this is actually not as uncommon as you might think. There are a lot of species on Earth that meet up with males once a year to breed, and then they separate back out, simply because if you've ever tried living with your girlfriend or your wife, you might come to find out it's a little more difficult than just hanging out with your bros, and I believe maybe in nature, certain species find it difficult as well. Anyways, they are separate from the males, and they will raise their young in the calm waters from any major natural predators and any extreme radiation in the environment. While we are discussing the females though, let's tackle their morphology as well. Again, I have to talk about the armor plating and overall size. The shrimps living under the ground are much less armor plated. They do possess some, but for the most part, it's just going to be lining their backs. Their faces are going to contain a worm-like mouth with a few teeth, so as you can guess, it's probably not going to be used as offensively as, say, the other shrimp can use their mouths for. It still can be a danger to a human, but for the most part, unless you fall in the water where it can kill you, you're going to be fine. They do possess some claws, and while they can attack with them, they're going to be relatively smaller compared to the shrimp on the surface. These claws aren't going to provide much of a defense concerning gunfire either. So I would surmise personally that they are going to be females for their species, and the safe rivers of the metro are going to be their spawning locations. I base this on how humanity is built as well. For the most part, human males are going to be built more for combat and defensive and offensive capabilities, and the females goes into reproduction because they have to bear the young. So as concerning muscle mass and bone density, they don't have as great of either of those as males do. So basically it's the endeavor for males, the endeavor of physically fortifying your body, whereas like for the shrimp females, it's more putting energy and effort into the reproduction of the species. Then we see the presumed males on the surface. It is nothing but struggle and death up there. From what it looks like, there are 4 top predators, each fighting for control of certain areas. You have the bears, the shrimps, the demons, and the watchmen. Humans are a contender, but honestly, we are only visitors to the surface at this point. For those up there though, there are near constant territorial disputes, and what is typically going to be more territorial, male or female? Correct! Unless young are involved, which at that point, stay out of the mother's way, males are going to be more territorial predominantly, which also leads credence to the sexual dimorphism theory, as females are less aggressive concerning their territory as long as you aren't threatening the area, which in turn threatens their young. Once you do, then all bets are off and they will begin their attack. Classic Artyom. Wrong place, wrong time, my boy. Anyhow, the male shrimp live on the surface and are fighting this never-ending war for space and food. This has yielded some very different morphological traits. First, this is going to give them a much heavier armor plating. This is going to protect them from the bites of watchmen when they are smaller, and in theory, it should also protect them from the bites of demons when they get large enough in size. The head itself is going to be quite different from the females underground. Rather than having a worm-like mouth, they appear to have a head based on that of an alligator or crocodile. Once again, it is possible that these things originated from the Moskva Zoo. However, based on the fact that alligators and crocodiles are going to be cold-blooded, I seriously doubt they could survive a nuclear winter in Russia. Plus, alligators and crocodiles are going to reproduce more slowly, meaning that the changes to their physical being would be much less over generations, whereas crawdads can spawn much quicker and create more successive generations affected by the nuclear radiation. So I'm going to assume that this head is existing in this form due to mutations brought on by the radiation. This head also may be a trait that is rooted in mating. The size of the head as it fans out could indicate gene quality to females and make them more desirable mates. Then, as time went on and the heads changed into their current forms, this allowed them a much greater chance at reproduction. The heads also possess a more well-defined mouth, as we would kind of assume what a mouth looks like, as in it sits teeth. There are also going to be very reminiscent of an alligator, just to add to further confusion. The front claws have been changed a lot too. Again, the armor plating on them has made them more resistant and powerful as well due to the added weight. When attacking these males, the claws can be used to block gunfire even at point blank range. The armor plating extends to the back of the creature, but its underbelly is still somewhat susceptible to gunfire, making it a major weak point of attack. Then we come to Big Papa. The bog shrimp is assumed to be a shrimp mother, but the game itself calls it the alpha male, leading even further to the evidence that supports the theory of sexual dimorphism. The bog shrimp appears to be very large males covered in a bright mushroom and plumage that also acts as camouflage. Also, just to note, the plumage could also kind of give it a more advantage over breeding than the younger males who do not have their plumage yet. These creatures are going to be the largest shrimp you encounter and are going to be the most territorial. If you are in their area, either you die or they die. They can use their powerful claws to block incoming gunfire and will take dozens of rounds of ammo before finally going down. They have been known to scare off demons who have been seen picking up smaller males and carrying them off to be consumed. Basically, the alpha males are going to be near the top of the food chain. The bears can still kill them, but the demons no longer have the ability to kill them, and humans can only bring them down if they are skilled enough, have enough weapons, and the entire group is firing at them. The life cycles of the shrimp appear to go something like this based on evidence seen in games, and also I'm coupling this with the generalized knowledge I have of animals anyways. The shrimps start off being born in the rivers of the metro. From here, they grow in the safe waters until finally they reach a size where they can survive on their own. If they are female, they appear to stay in the rivers of the metro and continue to grow until they reach breeding age. The male shrimp venture out onto the surface, possibly because even when they are young, they face territorial disputes and have a natural inclination to go to the surface, much like salmon swimming upstream. Once there, they continue continue to grow if they survive long enough. Eventually, they become large enough to begin breeding. The females come up to the surface and breed with the males, and afterwards they return to the rivers to start the process again. The males remain on the surface, and those that live long enough from this point become the alpha males or the bog shrimp. So now you know the morphology and life cycles of the metro shrimp. It is possible that sexual dimorphism is incorrect and that these really are two different species, but evidence seems to suggest otherwise and is more in favor of the prior rather than the latter. At any rate, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, don't forget to leave a like, and if you really liked it, hit that sub button to stay up to date whenever I post. I will post my Twitter and Discord link and my Patreon link in the description. If you would like to donate to the Patreon, which is the best way to support the channel, it will be up there. And speaking of Patreon, I would like to thank my patrons, of course. At the scientist tier, we have Layla Alizarin, and then we got your boy Master BC. Next up, we have our residents G. Anderson, Richard Muhlenberg, and Alex Parks. With their PhD in genetics, we have Divine Whisper, John Russo, and Scott Grant. Next up, with their masters in biology, there's Adam Hartswick, Andrew Lawson, Brian H. Briggs, Cameron Smith, Javier D. Rodriguez, and Laffy No Skill. And with their bachelors in morphological sciences, we have a big fat snake, Ahigao Comics, Average Soul, Dustin Ellis, Ember Saffron, Jacob M. Pasone, Joseph Radical, and Natsuki Chiaki. Thank you guys for your support. I always do appreciate it. Okay, so again, I hope you guys enjoyed, and as always, I will see y'all in the next one.